this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. I haven't got a clue what I'm going to film today, but I'm filming that. The foggers are on at 7 o'clock in the morning. And it's cold. And I'm thinking, what the hell's going on? And I've just worked it out. It was so cold last night that the heater's been on for the first time in quite a long time. I almost packed it away, quite honestly, but I sort of left it there because it's a wiring job. I've literally got to unwire it from the unit, and then the fan that's connected to it needs rewiring into a different unit. So it's a fiddle, it's a faff. But yeah, so the heater's been on in the night, and obviously that dries the air. You know, it's an electrical fan heater. It dries the air, and so the foggers responded. The new one up there doesn't respond because I actually turn that off when I go to bed. Because basically at the sort of temperatures in here at night, I don't really want the foggers on. You know, it's humid enough, quite honestly. I mean, that unit's saying 60%. But it's 60% at just over 15 degrees. That's more than enough humidity, you know. So, yeah. Foggers on at 7 o'clock in the morning. There's a novelty. Now I've got quite a few requests. They're only little requests, like can I see a certain plant? Can you do a close up on this bloom? Or this, you know, little things like that. So I'll put some things together to knock a video up during the day. And I have got watering to do today. Do you know, I nearly went out. I nearly went out now at 7 o'clock in the morning. There's some orchids I want to film. And the place is not too far away. And if I'd gone out at like 6:30, 7:15 in the morning, I'd have missed all the traffic and got there before all the people get there. Because when I'm out filming orchids and that, I like the solitude. I like to be on my own out in the countryside. And with a tiny little island like ours, there aren't too many places left where you can do that. So, you know, there'll be joggers tramping about everywhere, flipping cyclists hurtling around, dog walkers, you know, with their rampant dogs steaming through the undergrowth, frightening all the wildlife away. So I try and find places where I can just have that solitude. It is important to me, you know, places like that, and those times are special for me. But because I've got watering and stuff to do today, I didn't do anything on the watering front yesterday, so I've got some catching up to do. I'd have knocked out a lot of the morning, and then I'd have been watering later in the day, which I'm not too keen on. So we'll give that a miss today. And all the rain that was forecast that we had last night, not a drop, not a light. I love these weather forecasts. You just as well stick your finger in the air, you know, or look out the window. That's going to be a better weather forecast. Anyway, I'll put a few bits and pieces together and see what I come up with. But it'll just be it'll be mainly the requests today. I've got a fair bit to do, so we'll see how we go. But yeah, oh, that really surprised me because you know I don't need to look to see the foggers on. They beep, and in the quiet of the house at this time of day, and yeah. So I thought, oh, what the hell's going wrong with the foggers? Why are they on? But yeah, it's the air's dried a bit, so it does make a difference. Better make sure I fill them up. They were on quite a lot yesterday. Right, I'll get some bits and pieces together and we'll see where we go with this one. Okay, this was one of the requests, a close-up on my spotty fowl. Sounds like a teenager, doesn't it? This is Zheng Min. Z-H-E-N-G. I presume I'm pronouncing that right. Anyway, Zheng Min Brontosaurus, which luckily I managed to find a name on somebody else's plant. Filmed it close up at a show, came home, had a very good look at mine, and I'm confident I've got the right name. It's a pretty little thing. It's a dual plant. So it's a plant that grew a kiki out the side that's been allowed to grow on, and now both plants are effectively the same size, and both plants have got spikes on, so they're equally vigorous, if you know what I mean. They've both got their own root systems. I could split them and they would be self-supporting, but when I got this had 6 spikes on, and
They lasted quite a while, and I thought they were going to be perpetual spikes, the ones that just keep extending, which they did for a bit, and then they got so long and tatty looking that I thought I'd give the plant a good rest after that many spikes, so I chopped them all off and waited patiently for new ones, which I've now got. It's got 2 spikes on it at the moment, one on each plant. And I can see at least one other one coming out from between the leaf joints. Anyway, that was a request. Quite honestly, I forget to look closely at my phals, and when I do, I try and think to myself I ought to do that more often. You know me with phals, especially when they're not in bloom, they don't get kicked around, they just don't get a lot of attention, because quite honestly they don't need it. You know, they've all been potted up in the Ceramis bark, they're all in nice chunky bark, plenty of air around the roots, they can't stay wet and soggy, and they get watered as and when I get near them watering other things, if you see what I mean, because they can stay dry for a few days, they don't mind. I mean, if you think about the water-culture guys, they stay dry for 4 or 5 days, and they seem to come to no harm and bloom profusely. So, you know, those guys are doing something right. They get better spikes than I do. Anyway, that's one of the requests knocked out.
I'll knock a couple of requests out now. I'm going to risk talking to myself in the garden because I think the neighbours are out. One's on the school run, the others are at work. I hope. Still, they think I'm nuts anyway. Stacey May asked how the Cymbidium's doing. Well, here it is in the morning sun. The new growth has pushed on nicely and has pushed out some new roots. Didn't have a very good root system. It also had Fusarium. Hopefully it's been treated and it's now growing clean, but it lives out here, so it doesn't matter one way or the other. But it's coming on. And also Alberto in sunny Italy asked me to do some updates on my only terrestrial as and when. So it's just coming into leaf. That's a leopard marsh orchid. It's got 5 growths this year, 2 here and a cluster of 3 there. There may be more to come, I don't know. But anyway, they'll push on. There should be, I would say, at least 3 spikes on that this year, maybe 4. We shall see. But yeah, it's coming on. They both live outside, obviously, and that reminds me, I must do a bonsai update at some time. You know, that leaf colour is just gorgeous, and this one's leafed out, but I'll do an update on those soon. I've got a couple more to repot yet. So anyway, that's the Cymbidium for Stacey May, and an update for Alberto on my terrestrial. Okay, this is another request. This is another Stacey May request, actually. Hogging the limelight, lady. But I nearly had to do my Gollum impression. Precious is lost! Do you know, I could not find that potted flipping Dendrobium, and it's because it was in a place I wasn't expecting it. I looked everywhere and I thought, well, it can't be lost. It's here somewhere. So I spent ages looking for the flipping thing, and then I had to dig it out because it's in behind some big plants. But this one doesn't need the intense light, so it lives in a different place to many of the other Dendrobiums. I do have 2. Dendrobium moniliform. I'll put a pop-up of the blooms that I get on mine. There's quite a lot of variety in the bloom on this Dendrobium. Some of them are quite pink, and some of them are pure white, and some of them are white with pink tinges, so it does vary. Anyway, this one, since it was repotted, it's now pushed out this little new growth and this one. The others are all old canes that have been strapped because it was hanging all over the place and taking up too much space, and most of those canes probably aren't going to bloom again now, the older ones. They've bloomed in many places, so they may have had their day. Difficult to say though, because I thought they'd had their day because they'd bloomed, and then not long ago they bloomed again on the same cane, so I'm certainly not going to take any off. And some of them, in fact most of them, have still got leaves. I think there's only 1 or 2 that are totally leafless. But anyway, nice variegated form, unusual, well mine is anyway, and with those new growths it's pushing out some new roots, so that's good. And some new roots are coming from older places too, so it's starting to build a new root system.
It wasn't a good root system when I repotted that, which I was surprised about because the plant was doing okay. And the other one was mounted, and this one was dying. And I twigged that the reason it was dying was that it was floppy on its mount. And you know, the epiphytic orchids that live on trees, if they don't feel secure, they're just not happy. It's something they seem to need. And since I strapped it on a bit tighter and refreshed the moss, as you can see, it's now pushing out, you know, some good new roots, and that will attach it. This was effectively a piece that broke off of that one. I think it was an accident, I can't remember. But yeah, the mounted version is coming on quite nicely as well. The latest new growth is this one going up the back there. It's strange, when the leaves are brand new, they have no variegation on them. It comes later, and it starts off yellow. So the variegation is yellow, and then as the leaves get older, it fades more to a white colour. Cream, I would suggest. But yeah, they're both coming on well, looking good. As I said, lovely flowers on those, and fragrant. I do have to get quite close to get the fragrance, but it is there. So yeah, they're coming on. They're just lurking in the background at the moment because they're not in bloom. They get watered and they get checked for bugs and then just put back where they were. They're easy maintenance on those at the moment. And strictly speaking, those are continuous growers. Those are not a resting type Dendrobium. They should not be dried out in the winter, and they certainly don't like to get cold. So I look after these the same way as I look after my Dendrobium Phalaenopsis types. You know, I don't let them dry out for any length of time. Not even in the winter. They don't get watered as often as in the winter because they don't use as much. And if there's no active growth that I can visibly see, they don't get fed much either, if at all. So they do get a sort of rest, but it isn't a proper rest. It's not deliberately withholding water. I just reduce it right down due to its needs rather than forcing anything. So that's those two out the way. And this isn't really a request, this is more an information thing, which I love when I get bits of information that I haven't been able to find. I like that, you know, so don't ever feel that you're, you know, trying to be clever or anything like that. If you've got a bit of information that I haven't got and you think it's useful, tell me. I always appreciate it. But this is my little Jenkinsii cross, and the tag says it's crossed with aggregatum. And the name aggregatum is still in dispute. Some people call it Lindleyi, some people call it aggregatum, some people are saying they're two entirely different species, others are saying no, they're flipping not, as a synonym. So you argue away, guys, but Jenkinsii stands on its own anyway. And just a word about hybrids. The correct way to say a hybrid is to actually put the seed or the pod parent first and the pollen parent second. So if that cross was the other way round, it's not the same cross. It isn't. And you could get quite different results. You could get incredibly similar results, but you don't get the guarantee. The cross is made one way round, and that's the way that it produces its offspring. And given that you can get variety in species, obviously the hybridization programs that are used, that people ought to be picking the best of the best as either of the parents. You know, the one with the most vigour, the one with the biggest and bestest blooms and all that sort of stuff. And that's how that hybridization program tends to work. You pick the best that you've got of one parent, the best of you've got of the other parent, and the idea being that the combination of those two should produce something pretty special. And it doesn't always work. It's a real hit and miss game when you go back to seed. Anyway, this little plant is coming on quite nicely. It's got a new growth up that end. Yeah, you see that one sticking out. It's got another new growth here down the bottom there, and that one's producing roots. I suspect that one is, but I can't get in there. And there's another one right, and you probably can't see that one, right down the back in that dark place. So 3 new growths at the moment, which on a plant that size, that's not bad. And I'll say it, but that's so far. This will carry on putting out new growths throughout the season. And that's a strange way to grow, because it means some of the new growths won't be mature at the end of the season. But that's how this type grow. Yeah. They don't push out a mad flush in the spring, and that's all they do. They tend to keep going all through the year. Lovely little plant. It'd be nice to see some blooms on it. And the fact that it's got aggregatum in it, or lindleyi, whatever you want to call it, if it does bloom, it should have quite a few more blooms on it than it would have if it was just Jenkinsii. But yeah, lovely little plant. Oh, the name. I'm not going to try and flip and say that. I wrote it down. I don't do that very often. But according to Michael Pye from Deep Down Under, that is the name of that particular cross. Yueyang Fuyang. No, I'm not going to say it. And yes, I have done the dustbins and I have watered that shelf. This is my little notebook where I write down things that I must not forget. Yeah, so apparently that's what that cross is called. Thank you, Michael. Somebody else a few days ago, and it's on an older video as opposed to a recent request, said, when Catatanti opens up better, can you film it again? I think my reply was something along the lines, with blooms as good as that, it's going to be in a lot of videos. It's not going to get ignored, trust me. But yeah, many more blooms have opened up now. And I was lucky with that because its aspect remained the same. Even though I've moved it now, most of the blooms are opening up facing in one direction, which means that, you know, having moved the plant, I can see the blooms. Because where it was, I'd have been looking at the back of most of them. But yeah, I mean, these are pretty flipping stunning blooms. They really are. They're much bigger than the last spike. And deeper in colour. You know, the gold, when you see the buds opening like this, the gold around the edges really stands out this time. They didn't look like that last time. So I'm over the moon with this. And I do believe as well that on the opened buds, the actual gold around the edges is a broader band than last time as well, which adds to its attraction, quite honestly. That is a really good spike this time. I am over the moon with that. Changed my mind with what I was going to do with this video, having got the requests out of the way that I can do. Most of the rest of the requests are, can you show certain blooms? Well, I can only do that when the flipping plant obliges and actually produces some. So they'll, you know, as they come, they will automatically get filmed as either new blooms or in my bloom update, which happens on the 8th of the month each month. I'm dreading the 8th of the month one day when there's actually nothing in bloom. I'm going to have to cancel it. That could happen, you know, it's possible. Yeah, so I'm going to close this video now and get this one going so that I can actually get it loaded onto YouTube and I can get on with my watering at a reasonable pace. If I do come across anything unusual or that's changed or anything, I'll start a new one. But I wanted to keep this one relatively short. So thanks for dropping by and all your comments as usual. Thank you very much. They're appreciated. And your subscriptions, that's a big word for this time of day. They're all appreciated. You know, keeps my channel buoyant, keeps it moving forward. All appreciated. And see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.